Okay, here is Madrax's keyboard and mouse setup video. It's slightly different. I've changed a few of my setups over the last couple of years. Hopefully somebody will find it useful. I'll go through the thrusters first. It's the easiest one to look at. So I have forward on space and reverse thrust on left shift. For me it just felt more intuitive for a flight simulator. I have up vertical and down vertical on S and W. So again, straightforward. I also have E and Q as my strafe left and right. Now a lot of people have those around in different ways, but that's what I've got for thrusters. I have tab, which is my boost button as well. For rotations, I have most of my rotations mapped to my mouse, but I have A and D, which are my roll buttons. So yeah, there's not a great deal of movement in them. I mean, it's a digital input. Now for my mouse itself, this is where it gets a bit complicated. So if I go to my options and show you, it's probably the easiest way of doing it. So on my mouse, I've got yaw and pitch, which is pretty standard for mouse. Basically, you point where you want to go. However, I do not use relative mouse anymore. I've switched that off completely. Now, this is through various reasons, because I started using a joystick for a while, switched off again, didn't quite like the sensitivity on how I was using relative mouse. And I've also found when I'm flying through canyons, except I want to do extended turns, especially my slower ships, the relative mouse kind of reset the mouse quite quickly, and it didn't allow me to keep on continuing the turn. So this is the setup I have. I've got relatively low mouse sensitivity, but I do have the ability to switch my DPI on the mouse on the fly. So if I need to, I can ramp that up. Relative mouse rate doesn't matter because it's switched off now. I do have a dead zone because we don't want to have too much movement in the mouse. I don't want to move every tiny little increment on the mouse itself. And I've also included a power curve on the mouse. So basically, up until about halfway through the movement, you get very little actual output on the mouse, and then from halfway to full movement, you do get a fair bit more push out on it. And because I'm not using relative mouse, I need to know where my mouse is absolute all the time, so I put the mouse widget on. So that's what it looks like in terms of controls. This is what it looks like in terms of virtual reality. As you can see, I'm relatively straightforward, nice and slow, getting some form of semblance of stopping. Want to move, so I have yaw. And as you can see, it just moves around and pitch. Right, so it's done the same thing again. Now, because I'm not using relative mouse, you've got to remember that you've got to counteract your movement every single time. Right, so I do a full movement, now stop, keep rotating, still in FA off, and you've got to counter it very slowly. Now, the reason I put the power curve in is it allows me to do these fine movements like this and only have very little movement on the actual ship. If I want to do an extended movement, I can move it around to the extremes, and then I just got to put it back in. Now, obviously, this makes it's quite difficult to learn, but once you get used to it, I feel it just feels more natural and more joystick-like movements. I've always been a fan of relative mouses and that it recenters your mouse like you letting go of the joystick. I found that when I was using the joystick, I never let the mouse go. So I started figuring it out. So that's basically it. That's how I fly with relative mouse off, keyboard and mouse. So I'll have a couple of minutes of just flying around so you can see it. I've got the overlay on the top of the screen there, so you'll be able to see all of my inputs. And yeah, hopefully it'll help somebody. I'm saying it's the best way to fly? Most certainly not. I'm not the best pilot out here, especially with keyboard and mouse. but this is how I fly. I find it a lot of fun, and it's a good way of just having a bit of play around with it. So you'll see my mouse input on the screen, and you also see my mouse input on the overlay at the top of the screen there. So yeah, this is just the Ocaneris Fisher terminal station. There's a few bunch of crazy people like to do rather silly flying time trials around, and I've been recently trying to get this thing working on this. So, yeah, any questions, feel free to ask. Pop into the Discord if you want to know more about what we do and how we do it. Other than that, enjoy flying what you want, and don't let anybody tell you how to fly. And yeah, thank you very much, and catch you out in the black sometime. Bye.